So now it looks like the US government wants to ban TikTok, allegedly for national security concerns and spying on US citizens. And for the most part, the media is completely silent about it. And it feels like for the most part that the people who do know about it kind of fall into two categories or two camps. There's the people that hate TikTok and really don't care, or they think it's stupid or whatever. And then there's the young people who are twerking on it that are a little bit worried about losing their platform, but really don't understand all the full implications of that, losing that. But what you're hearing a lot less about, certainly on the mainstream media, Tucker, of course, is talking about it, but really you're not hearing a whole lot about, is that the bill they're using to cancel TikTok, or they're threatening to cancel TikTok with, the Restrict Act, has nothing to do with actually with TikTok. And the real purpose behind it should terrify you. So today on Renegade News, we're diving into the Restrict Act, and you aren't going to want to miss this. Welcome back to Renegade News Live, where freedom lovers like you can learn how to create a cancel-proof business, get back your privacy and your data sovereignty, and create the kind of income and free time that's needed to pursue your life's mission. Hi, I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski, and if you can give me 5, that's right, just hit 5 in the comments right now. I'll send you out our Renegade Business Cheat Sheets, absolutely free. And in those cheat sheets, you will discover the exact system that we use to make our businesses and our clients' businesses completely cancel-proof, even in the super cancel culture charged environment that we're living in. Good morning, good afternoon, Renegades. I'm super happy to be back. Last week we were having some technical issues, and I know that the volume came out really quiet and was really difficult to hear. And even worse than that, we were having some issues with the live chat, and I wasn't actually seeing the live chats that were coming through, so I had no idea that the live chat was, that people were complaining about the audio in the live chat. So we do have that worked out as well. I am seeing your comments today, so I'm super excited about that. As far as I know, the audio is okay. If it's not, just let me know in the comments and we will certainly adjust things a little bit. But right now I'm getting good bars, so I think that we should be good to go. So I'm super excited about that as well. We are live today exclusively on YouTube, but starting really soon, we're going to be simulcasting to Rumble as well. That could happen potentially as soon as next week. We're just working on some final technical and implementation details, but we're super excited about that. We'll continue going live on YouTube as well, just because of the size of that platform, but we might start running some exclusive live streams on Rumble for stuff that's maybe a little bit too risque for this particular platform, and we'll see how that goes. It is super great to see our live viewers here. And just let me know if you're watching. Let me know in the comments. Say hi. I really want to hear from you. Today especially, I'm going to be kind of rapping about what's going on with the Restrict Act, what's going on with freedom of speech. So I'd really love to see you. Would really like to just say hi and know that you're watching. And I look forward to seeing you. Like I said, if any issues, just let me know there as well. I'll keep a close eye on that. Because this topic we're talking about, even if you're not in the US, the Restrict Act and the topic of freedom of speech is super important. Even if you're not an American, because in the past, the US was kind of supposed to be the world's beacon for freedom and freedom of speech especially. And I mean, we know in places like Canada, the freedom of speech has always been severely limited for quite a long time. And right now, it's struggling to hold on to the last remaining pieces because of the C-10 and C-11 bills. Freedom of speech is really dying fast in Canada. But US, come on. You were supposed to be the example for Canada, not the other way around. So let's get with it. Let's get this free speech going. And I just want to give everybody just kind of a minute to log in and get settled so we can just kind of have a chat. We got Eliandro in the chat. I see him talking. Anybody else, feel free to join in anytime. We just want to have a conversation. And before we really get into it and get going on the topic, I want to talk about Trump and Donald Trump getting indicted yesterday. I guess it was yesterday afternoon that the news came in that he'd finally been indicted. We knew it was kind of coming for a little while now. And I don't have any clips that I'm going to throw on the screen for that or anything. You've likely seen it. It's everywhere. And what are your thoughts on that? Like, talk about marching the U.S. to a banana republic. I mean, this is, whether you like Trump or not, this is completely unprecedented in the U.S. The U.S. isn't known for arresting past presidents. This is the first time something like this has ever happened. We don't know all the details about the indictment yet. We don't know what the charges are going to be, but there's some assumptions made that it has to do with the porn star Stormy Daniels and some payoffs that allegedly happened. But based on what we've seen, like, everything is nothing more than misdemeanors at best. and apparently he's innocent of them anyway. So like, what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts on that? And like is this as crazy as I think it is? Like, to be arresting a past president, they were so scared of him. It's just crazy. And it just shows what a crown world that we're living in right now. To me, it's just the whole thing is just mind-boggling and funny, not funny. I mean, I think it's absolutely terrifying that something like that is happening. But it really just shows that the fear that the left has of someone who doesn't follow their narrative, doesn't follow this globalist narrative that we've been thrust into and it's being forced on us. And I know a lot of people in our circles that they're not big fans of Trump either, but whether you like him or not, he definitely speaks different than the current parties in power, and you got to like that about it. I also kind of have to admit, from a personal standpoint, I really like watching the people cry. The last time he was elected, it was just kind of funny to watch. So it just shows the crazy times that we're living in right now, I think, and just how insane it really is. So let's kind of dive into the topic and what we want to talk about today. If you haven't heard about it already, just over a week ago, the CEO of TikTok was asked to speak in front of Congress. And they spent about 5 minutes drilling him and asking him questions about the application and how its data was used, etc. Now, if you don't know what TikTok is, it's a social media app, and on it, users share short video clips. Most of them are under a minute long, like the majority of them are around 30 seconds long. And in the US, it's boasting about 150 million users. So it has a very deep usage base in the US, especially among young people. It's known as this young, hip, teenage place to kind of hang out, teenage and young adults. That's who's spending their time there. But TikTok has come under fire a lot recently for a few reasons. First of all is the algorithm itself. So in China, the algorithm is tuned into a way that it's showing kids who are being successful in academic and athletic pursuits. You're seeing kids that are solving Rubik's Cubes in seconds. You're seeing these amazing acts of athletics, a lot of patriotic types of videos showing how patriotic they are, and really trying to pump up the youth and show them in the light of being kind of this winner, successful type of attitude. Here in the West, however, it's mostly tuned to show like scantily clad teenagers. I call it a pedophile hangout because you got all these half-dressed girls, mostly guys too, dancing, twerking, doing these dumb dances. They're doing dares, they're doing pranks, and they're generally coming across as looking kind of dumb, in my personal opinion. And that's very much by design, and they're doing that for, clearly for an obvious reason. The next thing that TikTok is known for is being extremely invasive and taking users' data. I heard an engineer had sort of taken apart how TikTok works, and it was definitely one of the more invasive apps. It was asking for more permission for cameras and for contacts, those types of things. So it's very invasive, and it's taking users' data. And because of the way the Chinese government and the laws are in China, that data is now available to the U.S. government, to the Chinese government, because that's part of doing business in China is you have to make that data available. And they grilled him for about 4 hours or so. I guess it was about 5 hours. So CEO Xiao Zichu, he testified in front of the House. It was the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And it took about 5 hours. And they grilled him, citing concerns about privacy for Americans' data, protections for children online, TikTok's connection to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. That hearing was led by Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers. And it's a dual, both parties were involved in this. So this was something that was a very much bipartisan effort. And Congress and President Joe Biden have both been looking at ways to really crack down on this application. And they're talking about banning it. They've been talking about in the U.S. banning it. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the bill that they brought forward that would actually allow them to do that. Now, in the Congress statement, she had said that TikTok is safe and secure and that it shouldn't be banned, obviously. They make a lot of million. He talked about 150 million people who are using it, talking about how entrenched the app had become. But after that he talked, the members seemed very skeptical, and a few said that he was lying. And in general, the American Congress was very much critical of the app. So Congress is now using that. So they're using that TikTok as an example that they need to actually pass the Resist Act, and using it to garner support for that Resist Act as well. So, like, here's the deal. Before we get too much into the Resist Act specifically, we know that social media is spying on you. All the social media, that's how they make their money. They're monetizing your data. That's what they're doing. That's how they actually make their money. So this is nothing new. And it's also important to note that the US government is also demanding to see that data and demanding that the social media platforms hand it over. In fact, every year the US government is demanding more and more of that data from the social media companies about their users. And just before I came on, I had some data about that. I kind of lost it. I can't remember what the numbers were, but it's millions and millions of pieces of information anyway that the US government's demanding on the social media users. So don't fool yourself into thinking that the US government suddenly cares about your privacy. Now, they probably don't want the Chinese government having that information. They only want it for themselves. But even in that case, their ban or their proposed ban on TikTok really has nothing to do with your best interest. And all of this demonizing of TikToks is all just to get this Restrict Act actually passed. So what is in the Restrict Act? What are they talking about? Like, what is this all about? And the full name of this is the Restricting the Emergence of Security Threats That Risk Information and Communications Technology Act. So it sounds really ultra important, like just like any acronym that comes out of the government for some type of act. It sounds important. So officially, the Restrict Act establishes a risk-based process tailored to the rapidly changing technology and threat environment by directing the Department of Commerce to identify and mitigate foreign threats to information and communications technology products and services. So the stated purpose of the act is really to limit the national security risks by allowing the Department of Commerce to review, block, and mitigate any transactions involving foreign information and communications technology that pose, in their opinion, an undue risk. So in other words, it makes the use easier for the US government to ban or force the sale of specific software or equipment from certain countries as if it's deemed to be a spying risk. So in the case of TikTok, it makes it easier for them to either ban it or force TikTok to sell to a US-based company. And the bill covers a broad range, and this is part of the problem, is that the bill itself covers this really broad range of technologies. And that gives so much power because of the broad range of technologies that it states. And sorry, I'm just going to check one thing here. Sorry, I just wanted to send a message to our team to just make sure that our chat's always working, because sometimes it's really hard to tell from my side, so I just sent them a message to kind of ping me if it's not. So the bill covers this broad range of technologies, and it gives the government the power to intervene under a really broad set of circumstances whenever they see, in their opinion, that there's an undue or an unacceptable risk to the national security of the United States or the safety of the United States people. The act can also give the government way too much power to ban apps and services that allow people to communicate, things like TikTok. And so by doing that, they're limiting the freedom of speech. And it also gives the government way too much leeway, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, to control and censor information. An even bigger issue, and several social media posts and articles have come out talking about this, is that the way the act is currently worded right now, it could actually make using a VPN to evade some of these restrictions, they could actually make that illegal. And I'm going to talk about that just a little bit more in this in a second. But listen to that again. Under this act, it could actually become illegal to use a VPN to access certain services. And so that's massive. That's something that's never been considered in a country like the US before. So it's actually huge. And of course, the government says that it's not going to use those clauses and it's not going to use those against ordinary citizens. But we know we've heard that before. So we can't trust that. Whenever there's something to be open for usage, people are going to use. So really, what does all this mean? Since we know the government really does nothing is what it says it is. Everything's spin all the time. We've all been around long enough to know that. So for starters, this is a blanket ruling that essentially adds more power, a lot more power to the federal government in regulating who you communicate with and more specifically what you actually use to communicate. For example, we already mentioned that VPNs are a proposed target of this bill. So according to some people and some experts, that applies to using an American VPN that in a way that evades restrictions on the foreign apps and services. So for example, if you use a VPN, so if they ban TikTok and you use a VPN to use TikTok, you can be hit and targeted by this bill. So according to the bill, in the wording, it says that no person may cause or aid, abet, counsel, command, induce, procure, permit, or approve the doing of any act prohibited by or the omission of any act required by any regulation, order, direction, mitigation measure, prohibition, or other authorized directive issued under this act. Huge. That's very wide. And under that, if you read that, that means that if you do anything to mitigate, which means using a VPN to actually use Twitter, because you have a big Twitter following of 300,000 people that you've built, you could actually be hit by that. Now, according to Nolan Brown, he thinks that that's pretty unlikely that the courts would actually support enforcing that against somebody. But he admits that prosecutors could still attempt to actually use it. So prosecutors could use that in order to go after you. And given that there's harsh penalties of up to $250,000 fines and up to 20 years in prison, do you want to be the person who finds out that, oh, in this case, the court did support it? So it's definitely a scary thing to think about. But it gets even worse than that, because under this broad wording, cryptocurrency transactions could also be a target of this act. According to CoinDesk, although the primary targets of this legislation are companies like TikTok, the language of the bill could potentially be used to block or disrupt a cryptocurrency transaction, and in extreme cases, it could block Americans' access to open source tools or protocols like Bitcoin. What? Ouch. And that is what they do with bills like this. They use a sufficiently general and non-specific language to ensure that they can use the bill as an excuse to enforce anything against anyone at any time. And we've seen this over and over and over again. There's nothing new here. This is something that the government does all the time. They try to keep things so general that it's always available to be used. And at this point, you have to be completely blind to not see that the attacks on your freedom of speech and your freedom of expression are getting louder and they're getting more vicious. It's over the last few years, it's gotten stronger and stronger and stronger, and it's become like this snowball that's building up, this snowball of pressure against your freedom of speech, against your freedom to express yourself. And it's not just coming from one party. It's not just coming from one group. The Restrict Act has support of both parties in the U.S. And that makes it very likely that something like this could pass, as draconian as it is. In Canada, we've talked about it before. We have the online censorship bills, C10 and C11. And those basically abolish any remaining concept of freedom of speech that there is in that country. It's pretty much already lost and gone, because anything under anybody's in power's opinion can violate it. It's crazy. And that's happening everywhere. And the reason they're doing it, the reason the authoritarians don't want you to have this freedom of speech, because that makes people think. And thinking people don't just fall into line. They don't just do what they're told. And they don't just blindly comply because they actually think about things first. And that's the last thing that these authoritarians want, is for you to express your own autonomy and to take responsibility for yourself and God forbid, actually think about why you're doing something and why you're complying and if you're going to comply at all. They can't have that. They can't have that thinking. And that's making it more important today than ever for us to step up, to take responsibility, to get your message out there. If you have a message that goes against the official narrative, if you're an expert that studies something, who has even an opinion that's outside of the official narrative, you can't keep it to yourself. It's tempting to do so. It's tempting to do so because we're scared of going to Facebook prison. We're scared of being banned. We're scared of being shadow banned. We're scared of being kicked off of platforms. But it's more important than ever that we get that message out, because we're going to lose that opportunity. And if you have a message that doesn't always agree with the official narrative, you need to take steps right now to protect yourself and your business. Entrepreneurs and business owners working together to solve the world's biggest issues is how we're going to make this planet a better place to live in for us all. It's not coming from the WEF. It's not coming from the government. It's not coming from the UN or any other authoritarian regime or organization. They want to make things better for themselves. So it's vital that we continue to fight and we stand up for that freedom of speech and our freedom of expression in all forms. And just because you don't like TikTok and you don't care about TikTok, that is no reason to support a ban on it, especially when you have a wide-ranging act like the Restrict Act or other censorship bills trying to block those. If we don't stand up now, we're not going to have the opportunity later. And that is all the time that we have for Renegade News Live. Join us next week. Right now we're set Friday at 12 p.m. EST. We're investigating that time. That time may be changing, so it's a good time to subscribe right now to make sure that you get the notifications of those changes. And we'll be going live at some point next week, like I said, possibly Friday afternoon, for the next episode of Renegade Live. Again, remember to type 5 in the comments, and I'll send you a reminder. Plus, you'll get our cheat sheets. I'm Glenn Kowalski. And if you love freedom of speech, and if you want to make a bigger impact while you're pursuing your life's mission, you need to be a renegade. So I will see you next time.